Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to Inside Man United. My name is Rowan Brennan. Thank you very much for joining me once again. I hope you all had a fantastic weekend and getting settled in for a nice lazy January. I did the square root of absolutely very little this weekend and loved it. But yeah, thanks for joining me once again. I hope everyone did have a good weekend. So Monday morning, we do have Man United kicking off against Wigan. And there's been a lot of kind of debate that I've seen on various channels. Let me just fix my mic here. Regarding the type of team we should put out. And some channels that I follow regularly, every day, with people whom I enjoy watching and whom I agree with quite often, saying that they want to see a full strength team out against Wigan, that we need to kind of get the confidence back and, you know, maybe rout a team and get 4 or 5 into the back of the net and grow with some confidence. I personally think that is completely the wrong approach. Given the disaster that this season has been, yes, the FA Cup is the last opportunity for United to win silverware. However, silverware is not the priority for United this season. The priority is to get back in the Champions League and finish top 4, which is looking less and less likely as the weeks roll by, just when we start to get a little bit of form back, and when other teams above us maybe lose or draw, we don't seem to be able to capitalise, and when you have a great performance against Villa, you turn around and lose against Forest. Listen, Van Gaal will tell you an FA Cup doesn't help you keep your job, and to be honest, the fans have grown tired of, having good cup runs. And yes, it is nice. I'd rather win it than not win it. But would I want to sacrifice rest time, potentially expose my first teamers to injuries? Remember, this game against Wigan, this isn't just the biggest game of the season for Wigan. This is going to be the biggest game of the careers of many of those Wigan players. They're never going to play a bigger team than Manchester United for a lot of those players. This is the peak of their footballing career. And they're going to want to leave marks on our players when they're going up against Varane, Fernandes, Højlund, Rashford, Garnacho, and players of that ilk. They're going to want to, put in the performance of a lifetime. And you're exposing your players to injuries that we simply cannot afford to get. Plus, so poor have United's, typical first 11, first 15 been. It's high time that we gave more opportunities to these youth players. Firstly, to send a message out to the first team that these guys are looking to take your spot. Secondly, to get these guys much needed experience. Thirdly, put them in the shop window, gain experience, and maybe increase their value if you do want to resell them. And lastly, it just makes sense to rest your first teamers when we've got important games coming up, namely against West Ham and I think Spurs as well. 2 very difficult games to try and get us back into the top 4 conversation. So, in my opinion, not bringing in the likes of Dan Gore, Joe Hugel up front, bringing the kid that played at centre half, Kamwala, I think his name is, and giving these kind of players a run out. Also, Binder, this talk of I get wanting to play Onana in a league game because it's the league, it's the most important competition. We're going to be without Onana for at least 2, if not 3 games during the AFCON. Binder is 100% coming into play. He needs to get warmed up and he needs to get used to playing in a competitive fixture with the defenders that he's going to be playing with, or at least just to get that experience of having the crest on your chest and getting some important first team minutes before the real important games kick on. So I'd be all up for Binder starting the game against Wigan and maybe resting Onana for that Spurs game because he's just going to be flying directly out to play a game for Cameroon. Not that Cameroon's fixture list should be a concern for us, but the fewer games he plays in the lead up to the AFCON, the better it's going to be for him and the Cameroon team as well. So in my opinion, we need to give as much youth a chance, rest our players, protect them from further injury, and kick on with the rest of our season. If we do well and we stay in the FA Cup, great. If we get knocked out, no tears from me. Happy that we'll be out of everything and we can focus all our time and energy and the few resources that we do have fit into the league. But on that note, we have loads of headlines to cover from over the weekend, and some great injury news coming back. On talk of all the injuries that we do have, there is some good news with regards to injuries and players coming back. So without further ado, let's take a look at the headlines. Today's headlines include: United could land special $8 million Casemiro heir who Manu would love to play with. Erik Ten Hag gives injury update on 5 players, including Harry Maguire and Casemiro. Hannibal Mabry eyeing move with Erik Ten Hag to sanction exit. Ten Hag should unleash old school 19-year-old against Wigan, potentially saving United £130 million in the process. United very interested in completing a curious Barcelona raid after green light granted. And United accept £26 million bid for Fading Force with reluctant sale to fund new arrival. All that coming up. So kicking us off today is a nice little story from Tom Lever at Football Fancast regarding a player United should be concentrating on signing to replace Mr. Casemiro, and that is one Mr. Redondo. It goes on to say that with there being uncertainty and doubt over Casemiro's place within the team, his cost to the club, which we know and has been well documented, that Sir Jim Ratcliffe ain't a big fan of how much Casemiro cost, both in terms of transfer and wages. So it's the profile of player he's actually quite against having around the team. So does that mean he's first up on the chopping block? Well, it depends who can afford to buy him or pay those wages. And I doubt he'd be too interested in losing someone that well decorated, because when they are fit, I mean, Casemiro's quite a player. He was transformative for us last year. But according to a report from Team Talk, United are set to battle Liverpool and Real Madrid for the signature of Federico Redondo, who is a quote-unquote special player, according to journalist Roy Nemmer. So the Argentine could be purchased for $8 million, despite being a key player for Argentinos Juniors. So they're saying, although we don't have much of a budget to work with due to FFP, Redondo could be an intelligent move for United this winter. They're saying here, Casemiro being 31 and his long-term future in doubt, the 20-year-old has shown plenty of signs of becoming an elite player. He's played 45 matches across all competitions, and some interesting stats here. So he's still just a young lad. Passes completed, 50, top 15%, top 15. Nothing here that's quite outstanding, but he is a young talent, and pass completion 86%, top 15. Nothing here that's going to set you on fire, but again, young guy. So he is a well-balanced midfielder, and he kind of does a little bit of everything. I mean, to be honest, most defenders nowadays most midfielders have to do a little bit of everything. Yes, you're going to have defensive specialists. Yes, you're going to have your box-to-box. Yes, you're going to have your number 10. But everyone has to be able to be okay with the ball at their feet, try and get out of tight spaces, receive the ball quickly, get rid of it quickly, move, maybe have some, short, medium, long-term range in terms of your passes. And this is what we wanted from Amrabat. This is what we want from Mount. It's what we have at Eriksen. Casemiro's shown ability to be able to do that. The only one who really can't at the moment that's in our team is McTominay. So, they're saying the Argentine is comfortable with the ball at his feet, and he often shows bravery to pick up the ball in tight situations. From this point, the midfielder will either retain the ball by laying it off to a teammate or use his press resistance to get on the half turn and progress play. And with Ten Hag wanting his side to be strong in transitions, it's no surprise they're looking at someone like Redondo. He's a proactive defender. He uses a 6'2" frame to mop up play and contest duels, as shown by his high ball recovery stats as well. So we could learn to develop his out of possession attributes of Casemiro, but I don't see why we'd be signing him while Casemiro was still at the club. He would certainly be a young replacement. I don't think he'd be learning off Casemiro. We'd need to be freeing up his wages to be able to get. But I mean, your man Redondo at £8 million, his wages aren't going to be huge either. It would sign a bit of a death knell for the likes of Hannibal Mabry as well, which is something that we're going to cover a little bit later on. Said that he'd be a perfect partner for Kobbie Mainoo as well, as they be a complete package. Both individuals are excellent in possession, would provide control. So with the 18-year-old being called elite with the ball, as per United's under-21 coach, we don't need to rely on other people's opinions at this stage. We've all seen Kobbie Mainoo play. He's very, very good, and it's quite sad that he's considered one of our first midfielders on the team sheet at the age of 18. But such is his talent, and such is the malaise our club finds itself in. So overall, the signature of Redondo would make him heir to Casemiro. Maybe not. For £8 million, is it worth the punt? Well, it's not my money, so I'm going to say yeah. Let's snap them up. I always love when there's a young South American link to you just have these, samba songs playing in your head. And even if it's a defensive midfielder, you can't help but let your imagination get carried away. So there's the young lad there, Redondo, in South America, 8 million quid. And let's see what happens. Watch this space. In terms of injury updates, of course, we're playing Wigan later on today in the FA Cup, but we don't have a huge amount of Premier League games. I think there's only 2 games on this January between cup games, the winter break, and a few other little bits and pieces, given the congestion around December and with the AFCON and things like that. We're going to get a few games with the AFCON, couple of cup games. Obviously, there was some on yesterday, more on today. But yeah, in terms of Premier League stuff, not a lot going on, so it's going to be a great month for us to try and welcome players back without putting too much strain on the remaining players that we've got. So you can see here, he's reiterated that Casemiro, Martinez, Maguire, Mount and Malacia could all be available for selection by the end of January, which is huge news. Malacia been absent for 2 rounds of knee surgery, so it'll be great to have him back as well. And that's why Reguilon was allowed to go back to Tottenham. I liked Reguilon. Very unfortunate that he picked up a couple of injuries while he was there. I thought he did reasonably well when he came in, but again, as fans, we kind of want players to do well. We get excited by new additions. I know people wanted to keep Sabitzer, want to keep Reguilon. Some people wanted to keep Igalo, and maybe even some people wanted to keep Weghorst. You kind of want players to do well, but I mean, at the end of the day, do they have what it takes? I think Reguilon could have maybe made the grade at United to try and take us back into being a consistent top 4 team. I think he'd have provided better competition for Shaw on that left-hand side, and I think he is a more similar player to Shaw than Malacia. So I was sad to see Reguilon go, but Malacia is back, and I'm happy to see him back, and I'm glad that he's fit again. But there is injury concerns over that, and he's not a young man anymore. I think Malacia is I think he's 24. He's not. He has a baby face, but he's not as young as that face would have you believe. Mount with calf and Maguire not specified. Shorter term absentees and have not played since November 11th and December 12th respectively. But both closing in on a date. Casemiro, Martinez, they're both training on grass again. Ten Hag went on to say 2 class players. They will bring the team forward. We know that. We're looking forward to their return to the team on match day, but we have to wait for that. They still need time to fully make their comeback. But it's a good signal that they're back on grass with the team, particularly in team training, and they have to take the next step in full training, and then they can start playing games. So players are at the point of return on the grass, to return on the pitch, like Maguire, Shaw, Malacia and Mount. These are all players during January who will return back into the team. So, I mean, it's an old saying, but they are like new signings. We've had to go so long without some of our best signings, and Martinez has been sorely missed. I think he makes a new type of player out of Varane. Now, remember, Varane played for the Madrid team when it was Pepe and Ramos. So, Varane, people talk about Varane in a way where, he was just this incredibly strong centre half. Varane's a good centre half, but he's always had some injury troubles, and he's always been in and out of the Madrid team. He was never an automatic starter. He'd go through spells where he'd be on the sidelines and he'd be playing as the 3rd centre half behind Ramos and Pepe. And that's just facts. But it is good to have Martinez back, and even to have Maguire back and some additional cover. Mount, I think everyone's just dying to see what the plan is for Mount, just to see. We've mentioned all season that we're struggling to see what the style of play Ten Hag wants. Now, he spent 60 million quid on Mount. Clearly, Mount was a key part of what he wanted to do. We get 1 game at the beginning of the season where we get absolutely spanked around with this kind of 5 and 5, 2 banks of 5, with Casemiro being isolated while Mount bombs forward with Fernandes. So, I don't think anyone wants to see that again in a hurry, but these are the things that creeped out into people's minds about Ten Hag. I'm still all about Ten Hag. These 5 players coming back will finally give Ten Hag the parts that he needs to put this machine together that he's trying to put together. So let's see what happens, but very welcome return for those 5 players for sure. And on the transfer side, Hannibal Maybury eyeing up move with Ten Hag to sanction exit. With Amrabat being available, albeit probably temporarily, because I don't think we're going to be making that permanent. With McTominay available, Manu probably coming back, Mount. Then we've got Bruno Fernandes and Eriksen, of course. there's 6 players available for 3 spots, and Mabry does look like he's going to be surplus to requirements, which is quite unfortunate because you'd expect in a season where we've had so many injuries that Mabry could have had a bit more of an impact and staked a claim in a very similar fashion to the way Kobbie Mainoo has, and it doesn't look like he will. So he's going out on loan again. Now, apparently he was kind of mooching for a bit of a sale if he wasn't introduced into the first team this year, and I think under duress and under pressure, Ten Hag felt, Christ, I better get this guy in, or we could risk losing him. I think he wanted to loan him out again, and Mabry was like, listen, bro, no. And now he wants to go on loan again. He clearly wants minutes. This kid wants to, curate his career and get himself moving, and he clearly doesn't think he's going to get that chance, at least this season at United. Now, remember, Casemiro could be gone. Then you're going to have McTominay, who might be sold. Eriksen is just going to be another season older. Amrabat is going to be sent back to Italy, most likely. That's 4 players whose futures are a bit... So there's no reason Mabry couldn't potentially come back next season, but I can't help but think that if he did have a future with United in the first team, Ten Hag wouldn't be entertaining and putting him on loan. I just don't think so. Facundo Pellistri gets put on loan because there's no room for you here. We don't think you're good enough. This is what happens, players that routinely go out on loan. Clearly, the manager doesn't see a future for you, which is really difficult to see, especially when you've seen Elanga go on to great things. Not great things, but he's done well at Forest, in fairness to him. Ted Menji, a player a lot of followers of the youth team wanted to see introduced into the first team, doing reasonably well at Luton. Jimmy Garner at Everton, really starting to show why Everton wanted to bring him into the first team and why so many United fans were sad to see him go. So I think a lot of people don't want to see this happen with Mabry, but the kid is entitled to want to get more minutes, and I'd like to see him play more often. I think he should have been played more often, especially with McTominay there. That space that was on the edge of the box where Forest scored to beat us? I think with Mabry, that space ain't there. With McTominay, it definitely is. Mabry doesn't want to get forward as much as McTominay. I think if Mabry was playing in that game, I don't think we would have conceded that second goal, if I'm being totally honest. So yeah, it goes on to say here, there's a few different clubs in for him. It looks like his favorite move is to Sevilla. He even turned down the chance to play for Tunisia at the AFCON. So that's a big deal for a young lad to turn down playing at an international tournament in a team he probably could have started for because he was so desperate to get his future sorted. Now, there's been a bunch of different teams in for Mabry, namely Everton, Freiburg were known to be interested in. Well, I don't know whether Nice were involved as a potential move as well. And then obviously Sevilla coming in as well. They've gone through their own troubles. I think they've gone through 5 managers in the last in the last year. It's something mad. So according to Spanish outlet Diario de Sevilla, Sevilla are in talks to sign Hannibal on loan until the end of the season. A combative midfielder is said to be on top of Sevilla's January shopping list, and they've got their eyes on Hannibal, who's only played 327 minutes this season. And there is our sideshow bobbed young man there. I really like this kid. I think he's got a great attitude. I think he's a United player through and through. And on that as well, United ready to sanction the exit of Facundo Pellistri as well, with Villarreal interested in signing the winger. So we've got Greenwood at Getafe. We'll have Pellistri at Villarreal and probably Mabry at Sevilla. So yeah, it's good to see that our young players are actually playing first team La Liga football. So often we'd see our youth players, being sent out to Germany or maybe Turkey and, tier 2, tier 3 leagues, maybe not getting a run out, maybe going to the Championship or League One. So for our kind of fringe youth players, getting to go and play first team ball in La Liga is a very good sign of the caliber of player that is struggling to get into our team. And for the sake that we might be able to make a few quid on these guys. And if they do come back bigger and better, it's going to be because they're playing better ball in a better league. So all around, I think it's really, really good moves for the club, for the player, for the receiving clubs, and for the development in general. So I wish them the very, very best of luck. So Sevilla and Nice have also been named as potential options for Pellistri, who's got less than 18 months on his contract. Listen, with all the opportunities that should have been available on the right-hand side, which is Pellistri's side, for him to still not get into the team and now to be going out on loan, I think Pellistri's days at the club are numbered. So if you can't get in this season on probably our most cursed side or position in the entire team, with Greenwood, Sancho, Anthony with his own troubles, and and still not being able to kind of nail down a place. Garnacho now seems to be getting that in favour of Rashford getting the left. Would Pellistri be getting more chances if Rashford wasn't on the scene and Garnacho nails down the left? But ifs, ands, and buts, it doesn't work out that way. So Mr. Hannibal Mabry probably going to be plying his trade in Spain for the rest of the season. And I hope every other United fan wish him the very best of luck and hope he comes back a bigger and better player and hopefully to contribute something to the first team for the following season after some likely midfield departures. So Ten Hag should unleash old school 19-year-old v Wigan. Of course, we're speaking about the 5'5" Dan Gore. A great little player, aggressive midfielder, kind of a box to box. The 130 million, that is in relation to João Neves. So Dan Gore, as we can see here, you can see his height compared to the other players. He's a small guy, but very tough. And a good little footballer. So there was interest, you might have seen on a couple of episodes ago, Borussia Dortmund have shown and expressed an interest in bringing Dan Gore to the Bundesliga and playing first team ball with them, which would be a great move for the kid. I'd love to see him go there. I don't think he's going to get too many opportunities in the first team, but I want to see him play against Wigan. So the aggressive midfield ace has been part of the first team since the beginning of the season, but he's only featured a few times through cameos. Of course, he was playing in pre-season over in the States, and over in Asia. So Gore being in the squad shows Erik Ten Hag is impressed by what he's seen. But again, that doesn't say the full story. João Neves, £130 million is what United have been quoted by Benfica for the player, who a lot of top teams are looking at. And it is believed that United are probably the most interested in João Neves. And we've seen Benfica. They have sold so many players, overhyped. And listen, the Portuguese league is probably a tier 3 league, maybe tier 2, but most likely tier 3. Is it weaker than Germany? Certainly. Is it weaker than Italy? Definitely. They do have some good teams in Porto, Benfica, up at the top, but Porto, Benfica, and Sporting Lisbon, of course. But I mean, 130 million quid for a kid that's doing what he's doing in Portugal. I mean, young players now, it's kind of like Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. You know, people are backing potential with nothing really concrete there, just hoping it realizes the value that you think it can. It's a hugely risky strategy. There's it has to work out at 130 million euro or pounds. If it doesn't, you're not going to recoup 80 or 90. If it doesn't work out, you're not getting more than 30 or 40. I mean, look at Anthony. Look at Maguire. Look at these huge, big kind of transfer fees. Look at Coutinho when he went. Griezmann when he went to Barcelona. João Felix. If it doesn't work out, you're going to lose your fucking ass on these transfers. And I'm sorry, when you're spending that kind of money, you want the finished article who's been doing it and doing it well for 3-4 seasons in a row, knowing that you're buying the guaranteed article. You can't be taking a punt for 130 million pounds, especially after what happened with Anthony. So one midfielder who's been consistently linked and scouted by United is João Neves, who at 19 is among the most sought after players in Europe. But 130 million pounds, please fuck off. That's a joke. I mean, we've even seen with Darwin Núñez. He goes for big money, not a bad player, but 100 million, I mean, Jesus, get real, lads. Benfica have been pissing themselves laughing. They're like the new Dortmund now. They're just absolutely creaming clubs for their players. And didn't João Felix come from Benfica as well? I mean, I don't know what Benfica have done. Maybe United need to take a leaf out of their book, but it's the fact that they kind of do well in a weaker league, and it'd be like, yeah, but they could be amazing in your league, and people just go, oh, it's like, do you want this suitcase of cash, or do you want what's in the mystery box? And you're like, give me the box, give me the box. It's just fucking crazy, to be honest. But for a start, both are diminutive. Diminutive. Midfielders, Neves at 5'7", Gore at 5'5". So small, little, tough bulldogs, you'd hope. Low centre of gravity gives them good ability on the ball. Of course, the smaller you are, lower centre of gravity, the better you are at dribbling. Both are reliable passers in defensive midfield while being aggressive in the tackle with a real understanding of football. They are quite... they're kind of number 8s. You know, they're not strictly defensive midfielders. The defensive midfielder that United are looking at is Javi Guerra. He's kind of seen as the ideal kind of out-and-out defensive midfielder, with João Neves being a bit more of a cultured footballer, being able to play in a 6, but more as an 8. So there's a real chance Gore could leave Ten Hag wondering, Neves who? Doubt it, but Dan Gore would have to do some pretty spectacular things. I don't think playing United youth team and reserve team games is really a fair comparison to Neves, who's been kicking ass over in the Portuguese league. So what can we expect from our little midfielder? So excitement for him's at an all-time high. So he's impressing each time he gets a chance. And this contributed to Johnny Evans' verdict on the 19-year-old, claiming he can make it at United, which is, high praise coming from a player who was with the club and did very well with the club during its best times. And Johnny Evans is a very capable and well-respected pro, particularly in the halls of United. So Gore's also been compared with Roy Keane in the past, as he shares old-school qualities. I think that just means a tough bastard that doesn't mind leaving a stud on you. So yeah, let's see what happens. I hope we get to see little Dan Gore getting a run out against Wigan, if not as a starter, certainly to get maybe 30 minutes towards the end of the game if we're cruising. So let's see. Okay, United very interested in completing curious Barcelona reign after green light granted. Fantastic picture here with the boys here on the right, Christensen and Lewandowski and Rafinha clearly not in on the joke. Whatever the boys are laughing at here, maybe someone let one off while they were standing for the Champions League music. Maybe, who knows? So listen, Andreas Christensen, a decent player by all accounts, but was in and out of the team at Chelsea. He's in and out of the team at Barca. He's now fourth choice centre half. I hope to God we don't sign him, particularly for the money that they're quoting here. So two main priorities at Old Trafford are a centre half and a striker. So obviously we've seen Werner go to Spurs. Thank the fucking Lord. Jesus Christ, I'd have got sick if Werner ended up at United. And then Werner on course to join Tottenham, and Ten Hag will begin to cast his eye on alternatives. Of course, there's Jean-Claire Todibo. That is out and out the player that I want. Not that I watch a huge amount of French football, but I've done my research into the guy, and he seems to be a very, very tidy, cultured footballer. So I really like to see him. So we see that because he's at 35 to the 55 million range, he might be a little bit too expensive for United. Selling Varane to Saudi might help with bringing in Todibo. Saudi clubs are vying for Varane's signature. So Barcelona to sanction Christensen's sale, because they're so desperate for shagging money, Barcelona, that they're obviously going to be willing to sell their fringe players, particularly if they can get double digits for them. So United are labelled as very interested in signing the 27-year-old. Now, one good thing about Christensen is that he's got a hell of a shot on him. Like, he was always good for a couple of goals playing for Chelsea. He always banged in a couple for them, but he's tumbled down the pecking order at Barcelona. So Xavi's go-to pairing being Ronald Araujo and Jules Koundé, which of course United were linked at the former Sevilla centre-half. Inigo Martinez is third choice, with Eric Garcia, the person that he has to contend with as well. So the situation will also get worse for Christensen next season, with the report claiming Barca already to decide they'll integrate thriving youngster Chadi Riyad. So he's 20-year-old young lad. They're going to want to blood this kid in, and Christensen is just going to get in the way of that. So if they can get a few mil for him, I think they'd be happy to offload him. I don't want us to sign Christensen. He wasn't good enough to start for Chelsea. He's not going to be good enough to start for United. It just stinks of another Lindelof type player who, can be good, but is he really good enough? Sure, he'll do. We need to let go of the he'll do. Just because he played for a good Chelsea team and now playing for a Barcelona team that won La Liga, I don't think he's good enough. It's saying here that nonetheless, Sport insists United are keen to sign the centre-back. He knows the Premier League well through his lengthy stint with Chelsea. However, he never nailed down a regular starting berth, and whether he'd actually improve United is open to debate. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's even a debate. I don't put much stock in this story. I hope he doesn't end up at United. Not a bad player, but certainly not the kind of player we need to sign, and certainly for not that kind of money. We need to be looking further afield, younger players, lower wages, people we can develop that'll get 20 to 25 games a season, and ones that we can develop and grow. Finally, United will accept £26 million bid for Fading Force, with reluctant sale to fund new arrivals. So a bid of apparently €30 million or £26 million will be enough for United to wave goodbye to one Mr. Raphael Varane this year. So today's update regards Varane, who has not dominated in England like many would have expected. See, he's still living off his Madrid career, where he was kind of third choice centre back, would come in during spells when Ramos was injured or suspended, and would have his run in the team with Pepe. And when Pepe left, then he kind of cemented his team with his spot with Ramos. But he's had his own injury worries as well. And to be honest, he's had one good season in 4, this being his 4th season at United, and it was last year. First season with Maguire wasn't great. Second season under Rangnick, everyone was shite. Last season, played very well, and now this season he's back to type, injured, and when he does come back, not overly impressive. But he, when he has played well, he looks great. So the highly decorated Frenchman, now 30, has actually tumbled down the pecking order this term and has regularly been overlooked for selection. The likes of Maguire, Lindelof, and Evans have all been favoured by Ten Hag at times this season. And we still haven't really gotten an explanation for when Varane just disappeared from the first team picture, for reasons that kind of didn't really go explained. He just apparently was fit, just wasn't there. Sometimes, he's sick or he wasn't ready for this game. And people kind of knew he was fit. So we've never really got to the bottom of that. And does it look like he was trying to protect him or wrap him in cotton wool so he wasn't injured for a sale in January? Who knows? Because we certainly needed him. So now, according to German outlet Fußball News, Man United are fully prepared to accept a bid of 30 million. And so Saudi are bust for Varane. So it doesn't look like there's much interest in Varane from Europe. There's talk about Bayern Munich, but it's not the kind of transfer that Bayern Munich like. They get rid of players in their 30s with knee trouble. They don't bring them in. The Germans are too clever for that. I don't see him going to Bayern at all. Maybe Tuchel will have a little bit of a fancy for him and say, listen, I want this guy. Cool, but the Germans, they're quite smart with the way they do. So such a move wouldn't appear to be all that ideal for Varane, who Sky Germany claim would prefer to remain in Europe as opposed to going to Saudi. Listen, your ego is going to say, listen, I can still make it in Europe. I don't have to go off and retire into the sunset in Saudi. We've already seen that Jordan Henderson wants to come back from Saudi. We've already seen Firmino is looking for a move to Fulham to come back. I mean, as money can't buy you everything, and to be honest, maybe it's tough to live in Saudi. I'd say it's a huge culture shock, especially for Brazilians who like a party, who like a drink, who are quite a progressive, fun-loving society. I don't think the strictness of the Saudi regime would suit Brazilians all that well, but money talks. So Varane would reportedly be open to joining Bayern if they acted on their interest, though they've since agreed personal terms with Tottenham's Eric Dyer, amazingly. It looks unlikely that I think Varane will go to Germany. I think it's quite clear that United are probably going to either sell him in January or let him go for free in the summer. They are trying to negotiate a contract with him on lower wages. But whether he'd accept that, I don't know. So it's a bit of a funny one for Varane. I think there's going to be a lot of back and forth with the Varane story over the next 6 months. And, maybe he'll sign an extension, maybe he won't. But he looks to be a player that is causing trouble for United in a couple of different ways. And I think they'd be happy to see the back of him, but maybe happy to keep him if they knew they could, save maybe £500,000 a month on his wages. And that is it for today. So that's it for the news today, January the 8th, Monday. And what do we think? What are your thoughts on the Wigan game? I'm kind of curious to know what people watching this episode would like to do. Should we take the FA Cup seriously because it's our only chance of some silverware? Could some silverware give Ten Hag a stay of execution at the end of the season if he doesn't make top 4? It didn't work for Ten Hag, but it was a different era with Ten Hag because 15 months previous, we'd been Premier League champions. So he just came in after Moyes. So we might have had some delusions of grandeur in terms of what we were expecting a manager to be able to achieve. And maybe those expectations have been tempered slightly over the last decade of mismanagement and gross underachievement. So would an FA Cup maybe keep the Wolves from Ten Hag's door? That'll be 2 seasons in a row with a trophy. And, with Arsenal getting knocked out today by Liverpool, maybe it's worth a punt. I personally I'd completely bin the FA Cup given just how much of a disaster our league campaign has been. We cannot afford any more injuries. We don't need any more congestion in our fixture list. We're out of Europe. We're out of the League Cup. If we're out of the FA Cup as well, great. I think it's going to be a great proving ground for our young players. I said all this at the beginning of the episode, but I would be very interested to know if people think we should be going out all guns blazing with a full strength team. Get some confidence back, get some swagger, and let me know in the comments what you think. And about Varane as well. I mean, this seems to be a revolving theme. Would you sell? Would you keep? I've run polls on Twitter, and it seems most people will be willing to sell Varane, such as his unreliability, certainly in terms of fitness and on occasion in terms of form. But generally, when he is fit and playing, he is quite good. Curious to know what we're going to do there. And once we have all our players back fit, and it looks like we're going to have them all back by the end of the month, how do we play? Does Casemiro come in? If so, who gets dropped? And if Mount comes back and is fit, I mean, clearly there's going to be a little bit of betting in required, but a £60 million asset shouldn't just be getting splinters in his arse on the bench. I mean, we're not Manchester City, are we now? So, yeah, curious to know your thoughts on that, guys. So let me know what you think. As always, thank you so much for joining me. I hope you have a great week. Hit like, hit subscribe, hit that notification button, and I will see you on the next one.